Hello and welcome to the So What podcast, in which political economic analyst JP Landman discusses the issues uppermost in the minds of South Africans. You can find a written version of this content on JP's website, jplandman.co.za. I am Ruda Landman and I am your host. These first few recordings were done at our dining room table, but we will soon be moving into a studio. Hello and welcome to another recording to go with JP's latest newsletter. This one is dated the 20th of October 2022, Corruption and Consequences. It is your annual corruption update, if I can put it that way. It's a bit later than usual. Why?
Yes, normally I do it in August, you're quite right. This year I delayed it because in May, the National Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batohi, and the head of the Hawks committed in Parliament that they will bring 9 high-profile arrests, 9 high-profile cases to the courts by the end of September. So I delayed this note to see what the status was at the end of September.
Okay, and we start with the Gupta brothers.
Absolutely. A month after Ms. Batohi made that commitment to Parliament, the 2 Gupta brothers were arrested in Dubai on a red notice from Interpol, of course initiated by South Africa. They are kept in jail. They've applied for bail a number of times, but they didn't get it. Their extradition to South Africa is now dependent on a court decision in that country, in Dubai. The other case, the second case, the big one, is the Vrede Dairy Project, also known as Estina. There are 17 accused, including a former cabinet minister, Mr. Zwane, appeared as accused. They appeared next to 2 Gupta companies, as well as a host of other people. One of the nice, juicy parts of this was that Iqbal Sharma, an associate of Mr. Gupta's, who had a very, very high, lavish lifestyle in Pretoria, had to spend a few nights in jail before he could get his bail. That must have been uncomfortable. So they're being prosecuted. Zwane stepped aside from his positions in the ANC, where he was a senior person. He was a member of the NEC, being a former cabinet minister, and he's now out of the game, so to speak. Then the other big Free State case is the asbestos case, which involves Ace Magashule and 18 other accused. Now, the ironical thing here is Mr. Magashule and some of his accused wanted to take the prosecutor on appeal before the court started on certain technical points. They lost in the High Court, and they're now appealing for those technical points to the appeal court in Bloemfontein. The ironical outcome of that is, as long as the court case is not settled, that takes Mr. Magashule out of any ANC elections, which will happen in December. Then there are 3 other cases which are interesting because they go back a long time, and they're relatively small in state capture terms. Money is still at stake, but the amounts are fairly small. The one is the South African Express case, where people 8 years ago in 2014 defrauded the Northwest government of 150-odd million rand. And the NPA has said they specifically took that case, or is bringing that case to court, and arrested the people concerned because it has all the elements of a typical state capture case. Then another one, case number 5.
Sorry, but how did SA Express get involved in Northwest?
Well, it was about landing rights for SA Express from, I presume, OR Tambo Airport to the airport in Northwest, I presume in Mahikeng. I don't know the details of the case. Then a case that goes back even further, 12 years to 2010, is the case of the Winnie Madikizela Mandela Museum, which was built. And a number of people, including 2 firms of architects, have been arrested and are accused by the NPA of defrauding the state. The amount of money is not a lot, again, in the context of state capture, only 700,000, but, the symbolic value of the Winnie Madikizela Mandela Museum speaks for itself. And then the last one, which is case number 8, is quite interesting. It's a former commissioner of police and 3 former generals in the police force in crime intelligence, who have been accused with a number of private sector business people for procurement fraud. The amounts were 33 and 54 million. Aside from the criminal prosecution, what is really interesting is that the SIU, the Special Investigating Unit, have confiscated the assets of these police generals. And you will be interested to know that 19 immovable properties in Sandton, Pretoria, Boksburg, Springs, and Sasolburg were confiscated, as well as 115 vehicles. I can't imagine how one drives around in 115 vehicles. Clearly, the high life of the previous police commissioners, as well as those private business people, clearly their high life is now over. So that gives us 6 court cases of the 9 that the director promised. At Transnet, there were some fairly big developments. In total, 10 people that were previously head honchos, like Brian Molefe, who is the CEO, and like Anoy Singh, who is the chief financial officer, have been arrested, and the 10 of them are appearing in court on a number of corruption charges related to the purchase of locomotives from a Chinese company. We'll have to see how that case goes on the criminal side. On the civil side, we can take comfort from the fact that Transnet and the SIU again were successful in having a contract of 54 billion rand for those 1,000 locomotives set aside. The 4 companies involved in the case, one was Canadian, 1 American, and 2 Chinese companies, refused to provide spare parts to the current Transnet locomotive fleet, as long as there was a dispute about the 54 billion rand. That dispute is now over because the contract was set aside, and according to news reports, Transnet was close to finalizing a deal with those 4 original equipment manufacturers to supply spare parts. And that the lack of spare parts is one of the reasons why Transnet, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why Transnet is performing so poorly. So hopefully that will help to improve their performance. Then I can just say, for the sake of Transnet pensioners, that the 2 Transnet pension funds, the Transnet Pension Fund, as well as the second defined Transnet Pension Fund, defined benefit fund, have both reclaimed more than 1 billion rand that were paid to them from Regiment's Capital. And Regiment's Capital, you will know, was a Gupta associated company that creamed a lot of the state capture funds.
Well, it's actually not the only problem that is facing Regiment's Capital, not so?
Absolutely. Regiment's Capital was put into liquidation. They're fighting to get it out. But as they were getting out of liquidation, SARS brought a 700 million rand claim against them, and they're not out of it yet. Now, what I find interesting about the SIU, Transnet on the one hand, and SARS on the other hand, their actions, is that it indicates a degree of coordination between different state agencies. And I suspect, but I don't know this, Ruda, that the Fusion Center, which was created 18 months, 2 years ago, is playing a very big role in organizing this coordination. That is exactly why it is called the Fusion Center. They bring together different law enforcement agencies to pursue corrupt people.
And there's also been action against another company, Bain.
Yeah, now Bain, way back in 2018, repaid the 164 million rand in fees that they got from SARS for the rubbish advice that they gave there. So that is done and dusted. But what has happened this September is that Bain was banned by the National Treasury from participating in any public sector contracts in South Africa for a decade. Now, private companies, of course, can still use Bain if they want to, but they're excluded from all public sector work, and that must be quite a blow.
Then we turn to Eskom, and here you say no recent high-profile arrests, but one arrest which did catch your eye.
Absolutely. 2 people that previously worked for the Swiss company ABB, Asia Bahn Boveri, were arrested together with their wives. So it's 4 people, and they appeared in court. Apparently what happened is there was a contract between ABB and Eskom for 25 million. And over time, that contract was increased from 25 million to 520 million through what is called variation orders. Now, variation order is a fairly standard thing, but the idea is that it must be justified. And this was clearly not the case. ABB is cooperating with the South African authorities, but they've already repaid 1.6 billion rand to Eskom. And they've made provision in their latest set of accounts for another 6 billion rand as possible damages for costs related to corruption at the Kusile power station. So we're talking really big money here. Now, ABB is a very big international company, been around for a long time, and even they were snared in this. And it's very gratifying that they're working with the South African government. But like Bain and like McKinsey and like other companies who had to repay money, well, they also had to do that. Now, the interesting thing about this case is, although the two people that worked at ABB and their wives are not high-profile individuals, they are now in court, they have been charged, and the rumors have it, or reports have it rather, that this contract could be linked to other senior people that used to work at Eskom. And you can think of, who the names are, and hopefully we will see more arrests. So that was arrest number 8, not high profile, but certainly an arrest that was being done. Eskom is the big area of state capture. I mean, the Hawks and the SIU just this week gave an overview to Parliament of their work, the criminal work and the civil work on Eskom corruption, and it's a horrifying picture of networks and plain old-fashioned stealing and looting, bomb threats, threatening people, and so on. The Hawks are working on something like 55 cases. They already have some 18 cases in court. The SIU on the civil side succeeded in setting aside 2 contracts for coal supply to Eskom worth 10.2 billion rand. These were long-term contracts and they were found to be invalid and set aside. The SIU is also claiming 3.8 billion rand from former directors and managers that used to be with Eskom, as well as a number of private companies. So there's a lot going on at Eskom. No doubt about that.
It just sounds it was corrupt at every level. It's not only the major big contracts. It's also at individual power stations.
Oh no, absolutely. And Tutuka Power Station, for example, is fingered very prominently, but it's not the only one. Yeah, as you say, big fish and small fish. There's one guy who was an Eskom employee. He then resigned and became a supplier. And Eskom took action against him, fingered him. And within a couple of hours after he was fingered, he repaid Eskom 1.2 million. Now, it's not big money, and if only all people were that cooperative, but it proves your point that some people were small fry. So there's big fry, there's small fry, and everybody is frying the consumer.
But there is one arrest that you say is puzzlingly going nowhere.
Yeah, that is in the first half of 2021, so it's about 15 months ago. 4 people were arrested for 1.2 billion rand alleged fraud at Kusile. It included Mike Lomas, who was a prominent South African businessman. He was arrested in the UK, along with 3 people in South Africa. The 4 of them have been charged last year already, and this case is constantly being postponed. It's not progressing. Now, part of the postponement was because the defense lawyers, some of them, are pulling all kinds of tricks, but also because Lomas is still in the UK. He was released by a UK court on £100,000 bail. It's quite a hefty bail. And he's now claiming that he's in ill health and he cannot be extradited to South Africa. So there's a court case about that as well. But the case has again been put on the roll for 3 November, 2 weeks' time or so. And we will have to see whether it actually proceeds. But it's puzzling that an arrest that was made, as I've said, about a year and a half ago, 15 months ago, that case is not proceeding.
And then, apart from these high-profile cases, the NPA is just generally getting on with the job, it sounds like.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at their annual report for the last year, which is the year to March 2022, and dealing specifically with corruption, they brought 388 cases to court and they won 344 convictions. That's a 90% conviction rate, which is quite good. Interestingly enough, the number of government officials convicted of corruption increased from 86 to 119, 38% increase. But the conviction of people in the private sector for corruption increased by nearly 40% from 147 to more than 205. Freezing orders to the value of 5.5 billion rand were obtained by the NPA against many of these accused. Criminal conviction is one thing, getting the money back is a second objective. And it's also, I think they're doing quite well. And it's interesting to note that in June last year, just after the start of the financial year, more than 800 posts at the NPA were filled. Now, that's a lot of people to appoint in one go, and clearly the capacity will grow and the ability to prosecute cases will grow. So I think with these arrests that the director promised, and of which we have now seen 8 of 9, well, I think things are moving also on the criminal case side in the right direction.
And the Special Investigating Unit, how's it going there?
Very good. I mean, they've been on a roll now for about 2 years. Most of the action against corruption came from them. I've written about this before, and I've set out their role and their position. In essence, the SIU can only reclaim money via civil action. They cannot prosecute people. They must bring a civil claim and in that way recover money. And their work has been sped up quite a lot by a special tribunal which was created by President Ramaphosa in 2019. Now, the special tribunal are simply 8 judges of the High Court, of the South African High Court in the various provinces. And they, when the SIU wants to bring a case before them, they act as the special tribunal presiding officer. So the big benefit of the special tribunal is you don't have to go the laborious route of going through the courts. As you know, our court system is very clogged, and courts are just bureaucratic, slow, and time-consuming. This special investigating unit with its special tribunal is capable of hitting much quicker and much faster. Just to bring things together, Zweli Mkhize, the previous Minister of Health, was fingered in a SIU investigation in the Digital Life scandal, 159 million. There was no criminal charges there. It was a civil claim. Now, Mr. Mkhize wants to object to that finding, and he has brought the case to the High Court, but there's been no finding in the High Court yet. But that's a side issue. The fact remains the SIU is very active. They're very successful in reclaiming money, and although they can't put people in orange overalls, they are reclaiming money, public money for the state.
And then leaving the state and state employees aside for a moment, Steinhoff, the big news.
Yes, I started writing about Steinhoff simply because I think it is such a big story and what's going on there. And just as I finished it and as I sent this note off, the news broke that the Reserve Bank got an order to attach 1.4 billion rand in assets. That's apparently all the assets the Jooste family has, for claims of more than 4 billion. So the Reserve Bank is claiming much more than what is available, but it's quite a substantial amount. And this was granted by the High Court in the Cape in September. But that's on the civil side. It's quite interesting to look at what's happening on the criminal side. In June 2020, so about 2 and a bit years ago, the Hawks asked the auditing firm PwC to do a forensic report on the Steinhoff case. Apparently, the report, according to the head of the Hawks, comprised 31 lever arch files. Now, the poor prosecutor that must work through that. About a year later, in July 2021, the Hawks reported to Parliament that they were in the process of collecting 14 witness statements from people in foreign countries, individuals living in Germany, France, Australia, and the UK. And the Hawks started what is called mutual legal assistance processes to source 30 foreign bank accounts in foreign countries. And this evidence from the witnesses and the bank accounts and so on will be used to do a final forensic report. The PwC one was a preliminary report. In this July, 3 months ago, 2-3 months ago, the Minister of Justice reported in Parliament that the first leg of the Steinhoff matter has been finalized. Now, precisely what that means, I don't know. Presumably, it means that the forensic report is completed and that they can now proceed to build a case on the basis of that. He also said that South Africa is seeking mutual legal assistance. He didn't say with whom, but I presume it's with the Germans, because that's where Steinhoff was incorporated. Now, it's worth remembering, Ruda, that the Steinhoff offices in Germany were raided by the German authorities in December 2015. Note the dates. 2 years later, December 2017, the Steinhoff bomb exploded. It took 3.5 years from December 2017, when the bomb exploded, for charges of balance sheet fraud to be brought against 4 people involved with Steinhoff. Now, the Germans...
In Germany?
In Germany, yes. The German authorities brought the charges in Germany. Now, the Germans have a system in where a court conducts a pre-trial hearing to give an independent opinion on whether there's a good chance of getting a conviction or not. Normally, in Germany too, that decision is taken by the prosecutor. But the Germans have got this extra layer of decision-making, if you want, where the independent court must also give an opinion on that. And the court ruled last year, now exactly a year ago, in October 2021, that the case must proceed against 2 of the 4 individuals, and those are 2 individuals living in Germany. The other 2 individuals are not identified. Presumably Markus Jooste is one, but that's just speculation, and they will appear in court later. Now, at the time of writing this note, which is October 2022, no further developments have taken place in Germany. So if you think about it, a raid in December 2015, the bomb explodes in 2017, charges brought in 2021, 2022, confirmation that 4 people must be charged, and then a year later, October 2022, and nothing has yet happened in Germany. And I think that speaks to the fact that these cases are complicated, that legal processes take time, and you must either conclude that Markus Jooste is not guilty, or you must conclude that the Germans are inefficient. And I think those 2 propositions are both a bit suspect. So legal processes take time, however impatient we may be for retribution.
So with all of that said, so what?
I think the big so what is, it's clear from the amount of detail that's in the note that we've seen a step change in South Africa in both criminal and civil prosecution of state capture miscreants. The Director of Public Prosecution promised 9 cases. We got 8, and clearly a lot more is brewing and bubbling under the surface. Secondly, I think it's important to point out that people that were formerly untouchable, a cabinet minister, Secretary General of the ruling party, a commissioner of police, senior generals in crime intelligence, high-flying CEOs like Brian Molefe, these previously untouchable people are now in court as common accused. And it's not something that I think one should just tread lightly over. It is a very good thing that companies are being prosecuted as well, and that companies are also paying the price, some by being charged, others by having to repay money, some by being banned from public contracts. It's a refreshing development, because corruption always involves 2 parties, not just one party. Of course, this does not mean that all the cases will be settled satisfactorily, that people will be found guilty. But if you can have a 70-80% conviction rate, I think that would be very gratifying for the South African public. And then lastly, we mustn't forget, and Mr. Zuma is a prime example of that when you start in defending yourself in legal cases, it drains you. It takes money, it takes energy, it takes focus away. And the more you appear in court and have to go there and so on, the more your status diminishes. And as I've said, I think Mr. Zuma is a prime example. So the fact that action is being taken against people mean that they are beginning to pay a price for what they did.
Isn't there also a kind of sea change in the way corruption is viewed? That previously people may have thought, well, you just have to get a contract on the side and nothing will happen, you can just do it. But all of this now means that's not the way South Africa is going to work.
I think that's a fair comment. South Africa will still work like that for a long time to come. It's a different value system that must take hold. But the fact is, these prosecutions help to conceive and give birth and grow that alternative value system. Yes, I think that's a fair comment. Yeah, how do you fight corruption? Well, by fighting it. There's no other way.
Thank you for listening to the So What podcast. If you enjoy this content, please don't forget to leave a review and a rating, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any future episodes. Also, tell your friends. Remember, you can find a written version of all JP's content at jplandman.co.za.